Chapter 5, Dealing with Fear and Failure. The key to change is to let go of fear. Roseanne Cash. Fear and failure are two words that I know well. They were my daily bread for me when I was growing up. I was always afraid of doing badly and failing because the expectations associated with being the firstborn were very high. I heard so often that I was a leader and needed to be an example to my siblings, my family, and my community. In Zimbabwe, families are very close, so it is not surprising to have people who you don't even know telling you to stop doing something or just watching your every move. Every adult has the right to watch over you, give you advice, and most of all, report to your parents any behaviors they see as bad. Hence, I always feared disappointing all the people who believed in me even before I believed in myself, those who in one form or another helped to shape the person who I have become. In primary and secondary school, I put a great deal of effort into attending classes, studying exams, and making sure I behaved well. I always received C's, so at times I honestly couldn't see myself getting far because the studying I had done did not help to improve my grades. I knew, however, that quitting was not an option. It became critically important to deal with my own fears from a very early age, and I relied on inspiration and motivation which came through many channels. I went to church diligently with no excuses to hear what the Lord had planned for me. I spoke to people who were uplifting. I read books. I was curious, very curious, as my parents would tell me. I'm sure many who are reading this book will remember the poem, Don't Quit. I used this poem to inspire me whenever I faced discouragement, whenever I felt afraid, and when I didn't believe in myself. Here's a reminder. The poem goes like this. Don't quit. When things go wrong, as they sometimes will, when the road you're trudging seems all uphill, when the funds are low and the debts are high, and when you want to smile but you have to sigh, when care is pressing you down a bit, rest if you must, but don't you quit. Life is queer with its twists and turns, as every one of us sometimes learns, and many a failure turns about when you might have won had you stuck it out. Don't give up. Though the pace seems slow, you may succeed with another blow. Success is failure turned inside out, the silver tint of the clouds of doubt, and you never can tell how close you are. It may be near when it seems so far. So stick to the fight when your heart is hit. It's when things seem worst that you mustn't quit. Author unknown. I now use the same poem to motivate, uplift, and inspire others, hoping that many will take it to heart and believe that they have what it takes to make the best of their lives. My motto has long been quitting is not an option. I actually really believe from the bottom of my heart. That is why before throwing in the towel, I give all opportunities a fair chance. To quit would be a frightening excuse to let a growing talent languish within me. To quit is to give in to the opposition, to give in to those people who say that I would not amount to anything. To quit is one way of agreeing with that inner voice within me, one that expresses fear and tells me how incapable I am. Among the failures I have encountered, one in particular comes to mind. It happened when I was blessed with a very high-paying job. At least it was considered high-paying at that time in Tampa, Florida. I was being paid $18,000 as a master's level social worker, and I felt so depressed, deprived, and underpaid. I decided to do what many today still doubt, paid a tithe and prayed for God's guidance. I was tired of complaining and of nothing changing. I knew that with my master's degree and my experience, I could do more and earn more. I gave my whole paycheck of $950, representing 2 weeks of work, as a commitment to my Savior and to show that I was ready for change. It took a week for me to see my blessing, but I saw it when I attended training in Tampa at the local university. There was a lady in the training class who came to me during the break and asked if I was a licensed social worker. I said yes. And she said, Do you want a job in Tampa? If you do, let me know. We're looking for licensed people. I could not believe my ears. The job paid 52,000 US dollars a year, a fortune in comparison to my previous salary. I was sold. Needless to say, I got the job and moved from Orlando to Tampa. For those in doubt, tithing and offerings work. They do. I worked there for a year with no problems, and then came the unexpected failure. I had my annual evaluation, and out of nowhere, my supervisor said I was not doing the work according to their policies. She noted numerous things I had done wrong, which was a shock to me, as no one had pointed to me that I was doing anything wrong. I had applied for a promotion, and she said I was not eligible. Actually, she wrote me up, giving me a warning right at that moment. I was shocked. I felt numb and helpless. Within 2 weeks, I was fired. I was stunned. I was devastated. How could I have failed at this high-paying job? I remember my embarrassment as I drove from this job, playing the song by Donnie McClurkin, Stand, which said, when a situation like this presented to you and I, God, says you can make it, will you still stand and trust me? With tears in my eyes, I found myself saying, yes, Lord, I'll trust you. To me, this was God's voice telling me to just stand. He was telling me that He has a purpose for my life and that He needed to move me. I truly was not thinking of moving. I was very content, even though the job was so stressful and challenging. After 3 months of fasting, praying, and doing menial jobs, I got the job of a lifetime as a transplant social worker with Tampa General Hospital. I loved this job. I saw God's hand at work firsthand, whether it was the operating room, the boardroom where the decisions to do a transplant or not were made, or with the families who waited patiently for loved ones to heal. I was instrumental. I felt God's hand in all that I did, and I found myself confidently pursuing my doctoral studies with no hassle. I needed to be moved. It was not a failure after all. 6 months after I was fired, one girl from the company called me and told me they had all been let go. The company went out of business. There were over 60 licensed social workers looking for work, and the Lord had moved me and given me a job before everyone else was let go. What a lesson in failure and faith. His plans are better than I could ever imagine. I have had my share of many other instances I call failures, and it is interesting that what comes to mind next is marriage. I have been married before for a very short period. I was with Harold Marks, a gentle, loving, and kind man who tried his level best. I'll forever respect him. We dated for 10 years and married for less than a year before we divorced. Why did this happen? I ask myself. Looking back, I dated him for 10 years. However, we had differences that made me think we were not meant for each other. Like many people, I ignored the voice and the feelings that kept nagging within me that this was not to be. We broke up many times during the 10 years we dated. I knew that we were having difficulties, and he knew it, but we hung in there. It was easy for me to hang in there because I was in school doing my doctoral studies, and I was so busy that I totally paid a blind eye to my relationship. I didn't want to work on it or break it off. I was content just having him around when he could be. Thinking about it, this was not only a failure on my part, but the fear of being alone also played a big part in my staying with him for so long. What I know now is that when you are in that state of fear, you give yourself so many reasons to explain why it is hard to do something. I now realize these are all excuses. The funny thing is, when you say the reasons more often than not, you end up truly believing you're right and that it's truly not possible. I know I am not alone in the quest to start a family or in wishing to fall in love, get married, and start a family. Like most ladies in my age group, 40 to 50 years of age, who are not married and don't have kids, I chose pursuing an education over marriage. I truly listened to what my parents wanted me to do, which was to be educated. I place more focus on that than starting a family. I have beat myself up about what I could have done, why I just didn't get married and go to school, why this, why that, and I find myself more afraid of not knowing the answers than of just being. And yes, it's true. The more education, expertise you hold, the more intimidating you are to most men. I have no doubt that the right man will not be intimidated, as he will see the true me and not my degrees and profession. It's amazing how you work so hard to be somebody, and at the end of it all, you still yearn to have a family and find yourself struggling to find the right person. I have hope that soon I'll have a testimony to write in my next book about how my blessing finally came to pass. So let's keep praying and being still. I also strongly believe that my life is ordered, as I have mentioned previously. If I were to be married and have children, it could have happened despite my ambitions. I believe and strongly believe that God has not forgotten me. I believe He knows my heart. He knows my wishes and my dreams of falling in love and marrying someone who would love me unconditionally until the end. I am content with my life. At 47, I'm content with God's plans. I'm hesitant to say that if having kids is not in God's plan, then I'm okay with the plan, because I still believe that miracles can happen. I will have kids and be married. It is my prayer that the unforeseen will happen to me. To be married and have children at 47 will be a testimony I will live to tell. My goal and my lifelong dream is to be an instrument of hope and of peace to those I serve. I enjoy talking to people. I take pleasure in making them feel good and in contributing to their understanding of themselves, their situations, and their past. Working with adolescents and women has allowed me the opportunity to know that one can make an impact despite one's fears. I love seeing the happiness and the pride in the high school students I work with. When they finally get it and start working hard at obtaining their high school diplomas, many have not seen their future, but they build up their dreams to help them stay on course. And they work hard to get the key to their future, the high school diploma. I believe I'm a vessel, and I pray that I'll be made into more than an ordinary servant. My goal is to continue to ignite the inner strength that we all possess to create that life that we want. To motivate and inspire others to greatness is my goal and my heart. So I'm open to any and all lessons as I move along my life path. We all have one life to live. So letting fear, anger, or resentment keep us stuck could easily be seen as a waste of one's precious life. I believe my story will be a boost of confidence to those who await their right partner and family. My faith and my knowledge of God's supernatural powers have sustained me. I believe that with God all things are possible. I have faith that because I have waited, my strength will be renewed and I will see the impossible happening. The most difficult challenge with me being a public figure is that everyone has high expectations of me. They celebrate each time I date, and when it fails, I'm left to deal with the rejection and failure in public. I have learned to be still and wait. I have learned to be content with what people will say about my status as a single person with no kids of my own. I have learned to be secretive and not to say who I'm dating before he is the one. That is part of being still and knowing that all things will work together for His greatness. The pain and stress of being alone and childless have in some ways led to a journey of self-discovery. I have been to see therapists to talk about my emotions. I have been prayed for. I have taught and participated in training sessions that focus on the pain and the stress of being single and childless. I have even preached on the topic of being single. Through all this, I have seen myself coping with the fear of being alone, the fear of not being a mother, and the fear of failing in my marriage in a much better way. I also know that for me to testify about this lone journey is to give empowerment and inspiration to many who are going through the same struggles. It is okay not to be married. It is okay not to have children of my own. And it is okay to believe until it is impossible. In my case, I have no doubt my children will be a testimony to God's mercies and to the power of prayer and belief. I have no doubt that my tears and struggles I have endured as I yearn for true love and a family will be a blessing to many who will read my books, attend my seminars, or listen to my radio and television shows. I have no doubt. I remain expectant. I humbly wait. All of us dream of doing well in our lives. We all want to be successful. All of us have big dreams, even though at times some people think they do not dream. There is a fire within each of us, a desire to be someone. We all try very hard to achieve our goals, our dreams, we do. But on our journey to achieving those dreams, if we face a failure, a stumbling block, we might just break down completely. Sometimes for some, it becomes difficult to keep trying to get something because of the failures they have faced before. What ends up happening is that even when you try to work on achieving something, when you have this feeling of defeat, you're not able to put 100% into pursuing what you want. You feel discouraged, and as a result, you find excuses to avoid the issue and stop working towards what you want. Intentionally or unintentionally, the fear of failure affects all of our efforts or our performances at one time or another. One of my goals was to be a publisher, a motivational, inspirational speaker, and a trainer and coach. I was never afraid of being in front of people. However, I was afraid of my accent, afraid that people would not understand me. I was afraid of what people would say. I was afraid of being a failure. This fear brought with it stage fright, which I had never before had. When I met my friend, Dr. John Loblack from Tampa, Florida, it was as if he knew my heart. We clicked because his ambition is also focused on speaking, coaching, and training. He, however, was way ahead of me in preparation, so he started sharing books, tapes, seminars he had attended, and organizations he had joined to master his speaking and coaching. I became a student of speaking by listening to the late Jim Rohn, Dennis Whitley, Les Brown, Zig Ziglar, Louis Hay, Dr. Wayne Dyer, and many others. I joined the Rotary Club, Toastmasters, and the National Speakers Association. To get rid of my stage fright, I started volunteering to speak at churches, company meetings, retreats, Toastmasters, and Rotary clubs as a volunteer. I like the saying that says, to conquer fear, you just have to do what you're afraid of. Fear is indeed tissue paper thin. I cannot emphasize enough the benefits of having a life career coach that can help you along the way. It is truly a priceless investment. Coming from Zimbabwe, I was at first very skeptical about self-investment or personal development because I felt that it was money I could use to pay bills or to send home. I realized after several encounters with mentors, colleagues, and people who have made it in their lives that personal development and self-investment are key. I learned to care for myself and to gain experience related to how I will help others overcome the things I have had to overcome, with fear being the number one issue that got in my way. Lessons learned. The first lesson is to stop looking at failure in a negative way or as a negative thing. Most people tend to associate failure with weakness, stupidity, or dumbness. I totally disagree with that. I believe and I know that if you're doing something and you think you're just perfect in it, that means something seriously is going wrong. When one thinks he or she is perfect, then that means they have closed all doors that might lead to growth or improvement. I have learned the hard way that whenever there is a failure, there are a million chances for improvement. Failures and fears have made me more determined to empower people to pursue their dreams despite of their fears. I travel around the world as a Susan Jeffers certified Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway coach, speaker, and trainer in order to speak to many about fear. It is apparent that we should look at failure as simply another step towards success and also as a step towards opportunities to change and grow. Strive to make yourself positive enough to see the good side of failure at all times. The second lesson is refraining from labeling yourself as a failure. It won't help and may actually discourage you from trying again. But if you don't try again, you won't succeed. So think of it as having found a way that doesn't work. Now you just need to try something else. The third lesson is not to try to frustrate yourself by whacking at the problem in the same way again and again like a machine that only has one function. Try a different approach. You might be amazed at the results you get when you attack the problem in a new way or by looking at it from a new angle. The fourth lesson, be patient. Rome was not built in a day. Many small steps forward will get you to your end goal, even if each step seems insignificant. For my Christian believers out there, the following are lessons and beliefs that have helped me cope with my fears in a more mature Christian way. Number 1, strongly believe that a Christian can become successful in spite of past failures because of God's incredible grace and forgiveness. We may have to live with the results of some of our failures or sins, yet God is free to continue to love us in Christ and use us for His purposes because of grace. John 21 and Peter. Number 2, seek to use failures as lessons for promoting growth and change. Understand that failures remind us of the consequences of our decisions. We reap what we sow. This is the law of the harvest. Failures remind us of what can happen. They can make us careful, but they should not be allowed to paralyze us. After recognizing that our failures show us what we should and should not do, they become lessons in where we went wrong and why. You know what they say. Hindsight is 20/20. If we will learn from history from our past mistakes, it can help us avoid making the same mistake twice. Number 3, after failing at something, acknowledge your failures and refuse to hide behind some lame excuse. Confess any sins to God when sin is involved in the failure. Study or examine what happened so that you can learn from the failure. Put it behind you and move ahead. 1 John 1 verse 9 and Philippians 3 verse 13. Be assured of God's forgiveness. You are forgiven. Count on and rest in His forgiveness and refuse the failure as an excuse for morbid introspection, pessimism, self-pity, depression, or fear of moving on. If not for yourself, then for the Lord. Ask Him for forgiveness and move on despite the embarrassment or the fear of ridicule that you might feel. Number 4, choose to grow through failure. God loves you despite your faults. His love is unconditional. Know that we are not now perfect, nor will we ever be. Remember that God still has a plan for our lives. God is not through with us yet, and we need to get on with His plan. Number 5, there are many causes of failure. Yes, there are many causes of failure. Some are the product of specific acts of sin, but some are not. Some are simply the product of ignorance or of circumstances beyond our control. Whether caused by sin or by the many things that can happen beyond our control, all failure teaches us the important truth of just how desperately we need God or a higher power and how much we need His mercy and His grace in our lives. Sometimes our failures are mirrors of criticism, but they can always become tools for growth and for deeper levels of trust and commitment to God if we respond to them as such, rather than choosing to rebel or become hardened as a result of the difficulty. As Erwin W. Lutzer puts it, God is adequate for all kinds of failure. Some failures may not be our fault, but they serve as reminders that we must live with eternal priorities in mind. Other failures are directly the result of our own sinful choices. Regardless, God has made more adequate provision for us to live as a life of freedom and productivity, a life of abundance and peace, in spite of it all. A dose of motivation. Our faithfulness in the present will reap greater rewards in the future. When I teach on subjects such as living your dream life, overcoming life's obstacles, profits are better than wages, feel the fear and do it anyway, or forgiveness is key to your freedom, I always emphasize the importance of sticking to your goals and sacrificing for what you want. As I talk about the sacrifices that must be made, I usually get some discontented stares, but I always leave the attendees with one question. How badly do you want it? Well, how badly? That's my question to you today. Do you want your dream bad enough that you're willing to burn the midnight oil? Do you want your dream bad enough to feel the fear and do it anyway? Do you want your dream bad enough to withstand criticism and opposition? Will you continue to persist in the face of rejection or loss? Will you throw in the towel when things do not go as you expected them to? Make no mistake about it, your confidence and your determination will be tested as you pursue your passions and dreams. But understand the challenges you face are not uncommon. As you study the lives of great men and women in history as well as in contemporary society, let their lives serve as an inspiration that will sustain you through the difficult times. If they made it in spite of what they had to endure, so can you. I want to encourage you not to give up just because it's hard. Keep pressing forward. Just know that some of the greatest achievements have their origin in the most complicated and challenging problems. I have learned that where there is great difficulty, there is also great opportunity. If you've given up on your dream or placed it on the back burner due to difficulties or distractions, moving from your home country, getting married, or having children, I want to challenge you to pick it up again. Reignite your passion and make the decision that you're going to see it through to the end. Don't make any excuses. Just do it. Retaining or hiring a coach will be beneficial in getting started if you're hesitant or unsure. Success seems to be connected with action. Successful men keep moving. They make mistakes, but they don't quit. Conrad Hilton.